Okay, here we come again. So with this one, population and sampling. So you have your instrument, you are now ready, and your instrument is valid, it is reliable, and now you're ready to go out and decide on who is going to complete your study for you, who's going to complete your questionnaire, your instrument for you. So you want to know who is your population, who is your sample, who are the people that will actually be a part of your study. So that will take us to the discussion of population and sampling. So population, let's see if we can define a little bit, and then we'll talk later on how do we do the sampling, how do we choose the samples for the quantitative studies as well as for the qualitative studies. So population, this refers to the entire group of people or events, because it depends on what you're studying. You might be studying events, you might be studying people, you might be studying institutions. So this is the entire group of people, events, institutions, issues, countries that is the target or the subject of your study. So it could be all of the students at the Evangelical Theological College, or it could be all of the students in the Holistic Child Development Department. So those will be your populations. That will be all of them. But you're not going to study all of them. You're going to study a part of them, and that part we'll be seeing later on will be called the sample. So population is the entire group that you'll be studying. A group of individuals that comprise the same characteristics, this is the idea, they are the same characteristics. They belong to a school, or they are all theological institutions, or they are all privately owned schools, that kind of thing. So they have similar characteristics, all teachers, all high school administrators, that kind of thing. In your writing, you need to define the population in a very sufficient detail so that other people who want to repeat your study, for example, they will be able to understand which population did this person work with, or if they want to apply whatever finding you have, they need to be able to understand who is your population. So you need to be able to describe your population in as much detail as possible. The sample refers to any subset of this or subgroup of your population. So you have the big population, so sample will be a subset, a part, a subgroup of the bigger population that you have. It's a small population of the population, it's a small proportion of the population that is selected for observation and analysis. So it's because you can't study all of them, you choose a certain part of that population and you'll be studying that. That small population, small proportion of the population will be called your sample. Sample also needs to be clearly defined as well. So an example here is, suppose we have this, we have this under population, you have the high school teachers. So your population is all of the high school teachers. Your sample will be all high school biology teachers. So the biology teachers are a part of the bigger high school teachers, but not all of them. So you have all of the high school teachers. From among all the high school teachers, you're selecting only the biology teachers, or the other one. All private college students. All private college students. In this case, you may take one private college. So your population will be all of the private colleges, but you're going to study only one private college. Or you may have graduate program educators, but you may choose graduate program educators from 5 different seminaries. So you're not looking at all the graduate teachers, but you're going to select the graduate teachers from educators from 5 institutions. So you see the sample is a part of the bigger population. It's a subset, it's a subgroup of the bigger population that will actually be part of the study. What would be the possible population for your study? So you look at your own and ask yourself, what would be my population? Who is my population? Okay. Quantitative sampling. Important issues when we think of sampling is, one is representation, the extent to which the sample is representative of the population. So when you're thinking of quantitative study, you want to make sure as much as possible that your sample is representative of the bigger population. The conclusions, whatever conclusions you make of the sample, should be true of your bigger population. The other one is generalization, the extent to which the results of the study can be reasonably extended from the sample to the population. Can I actually, whatever I find, whatever conclusion I'm making with the sample, can I actually take it and make it to be true, or can I apply it to the bigger population? So representation and also the ability to be able to generalize my findings, my conclusions from the sample to the population. Types of quantitative sampling, there are several of them. We will not be able to talk about all of them, but generally, broadly here, we divide them as probability sampling and non-probability sampling. The probability sampling are the ones that will be used in quantitative studies, and then non-probability sampling is mostly for the qualitative sampling for the most part. So probability sampling can be of this one: simple random sampling, stratified sampling, systematic random sampling, and there are other ones. So simple random sampling, stratified sampling, systematic random sampling. I think we'll talk about maybe the first two, simple and stratified. And under non-probability sampling, we have the convenience sampling and purposive sampling, and even under purposive, there are different other ones that we'll be using, and we'll be talking about some of them in a minute. So probability sampling, this is the selection of individuals from the population so that they are representative of the population. Okay, so individuals are chosen from the population with the idea of representation from the population, but how would that be possible? How can we make sure that they are representative of the population? In probability sampling, the people, places or things, they are randomly selected. So I don't go and pick individuals from the group. They are randomly selected. That means I don't have any control. As a researcher, you don't have control of it. That means all of the individuals have an equal chance of being selected. So if we look at our class, for example, and if I want to choose 5 people from our group, it has to, if this is to be probability sampling, or if it is, if it is to be probability sampling, then I cannot individually go pick, saying, okay, let's have Eyob, Samuel. We can't be doing that, okay? So we need to be thinking, how can we choose the members to be a part of the sample in a random way? So probability sampling enables the researcher to generalize to the larger population and be able to make inferences. Now, in the simple random sampling way, selecting subjects so that all members of the population have an equal and independent chance of being selected. Again, this is the understanding for probability sampling. Every individual in the population has an equal chance of being selected from it. Okay, and that will be independent of the researcher. The selection is random, or it is chance beyond the control of the researcher. Advantage of simple random sampling is easy to conduct. It's not very difficult at all, and it provides high probability of achieving a representative sampling. It will have some disadvantages that we'll be looking at. One disadvantage is the researcher may, just because of the draw, or because he picks randomly, not get a good representation of subgroups in the population. I'll give us an example. Some samples may be over or underrepresented. So you may have the population, and from the population you draw a sample, and when you look at your sample, you may realize that there is an overrepresentation of a certain group, but an underrepresentation of another group. So this is a possible disadvantage. For example, in your sample, you may end up seeing you have too many female and very, very few male. You may even not find any male, okay, depending on the population. So that is a possible disadvantage. Another possible disadvantage is a non-response error is high because you select them randomly and you try to send out your questionnaire to these people, and for some reason they may not be responding. Some of the members selected may have moved to other places, so they're not there. So you selected them, their name is a part of the sample, but maybe they are not there, so you will have a non-response, a higher non-response rate. Contacting all members of the sample may be difficult because they may have changed their addresses, different things may have happened, as opposed to purposefully selecting. If I was purposefully selecting, okay, so and so you become a part of it, then I know who they are, and I choose based on the fact that they are going to be able to give me the data I need. With random sampling, that won't happen because you don't have a choice as to who comes into your place. You know, some people are people who give you good data. They're very good, very helpful. At times, this is a thing of research. At times, you'll have people who may not be so keen at doing that, and therefore you'll have trouble with it. Okay, selection process in random sampling. How does random sampling work? I'll keep giving us an example, and I'll give us a table. So identify and define the population. That's where it starts. Know your population. And let's say we have 56, and my population is the 56 students that I had in my research method class. Determine the desired sample size. Then you decide how many do I want in my population, in my sample size. So I have my population, I know them, and then I decide, okay, how many of these ones do I need? Normally, if it is 56 or even 100, for quantitative, I would say include all of them. But for the sake of an example, let's say out of 56, let's say we want just 30 of them, okay? Normally you would use the sample size table. There's a sample size calculation that you can do, which we won't be able to do. Look at here. I'll show us the sample size table in a minute though. So once you decide on how many you want in your sample, you have a list of your population. Now what you do is you list all the members of your population, and then you assign each member a consecutive number. So once you list them, then you give them numbers 1, 2, 3, 4, and you number them up to 56. Now you go and find the table of random numbers. This is a list of numbers that is generated by the computer, and you will be using that for determining who will be a part of your sample. And let me show us how that works. So this is a table of random numbers, and you'll find it. Google this. That's where I found this one. So right now, what we have is we have 56 people, participants in our study. 56 is the population. So the sample size is only 30. So we're going to choose 30 out of the 56. Now, the numbers that I have numbered my population is from 1 to 56. So I cannot go beyond 56 because I don't have anyone beyond 56. So I don't have 57th participant. So the numbers that I'll be finding is for those below 56 and below 56. So it is a 2-digit number. So what you do is you go to this table, and what you do is you start anywhere you want. So for me, let's say I start here with this one, okay? So I start here. So the first number that I choose, and then you go from here, you keep going to the right, okay? And because it's a 2-digit one I choose, the first one is here. So the first one will be 51. So 51, the 51st students will be a part of my sample. The next one is 73. Because 73 is above 56, that will not be a part of my study. Then I have 14. 14 is a part of my population number, so it will go in. And then I have 42. 42 is also below 56, so that one will also go in, and then 54 will also go in. 66 will not go in because that's above my thing, and then 68 is also above, so it won't go in. 57 will not go in. 28 will go in. 35 will go in, and you keep going. Okay, you keep going until you get your the number of people you want for a sample, which in our case is 30. Okay, I hope that is clear. So let me continue to explain the same thing. Select an arbitrary starting point from a table of random numbers, just the way I showed you. I started from that number. And then if the number corresponds to the number assigned to an individual in the population, that individual in the sample will go into the sample. If not, that number will be ignored, as we have been doing. So if it is above 56, goes out. Below 56 goes into a part of the sample. Like from among the 56, we drew a 34. So you go to the table and you go to the table and you see who is on number 34, and that person will become a part of your sample, your study. Okay, I would like you to just try this later on for yourself. You can open your smartphone and Google this thing called StatTrak. This is another easy way of generating random numbers. It helps you to generate random numbers. And then what you try to do is assume that you have 30 people, you have 56 people, and from the 56, see if you can come up with 30 random numbers. So StatTrak, you just go into Google and type StatTrak, and it will come in, and you'll figure that out. See, enter the 56. How many people you want is 56. From 56 indicates what your sample size should be, and then it will help you to generate it. So this will be something that I use now. Okay, stratified sampling is another one, another method for probability sampling. What this does is it involves dividing your population into homogeneous subgroups, and then taking a simple random sample in each subgroup. So instead of taking your sample from all your population, for example, you can divide male and female, and then you do simple random from the female and also from the male. Okay, so that means you have stratified. You're not just dealing with the whole big group, but you're dealing with a subgroup. In this case, the female subgroup and the male subgroup, and within each subgroup, you will do a simple random sampling. Okay. The sample is selected in such a way as to ensure that certain subgroups in the population are represented in the sample in proportion to their number in the population. So the way that will happen is you will maintain the proportion. So the proportion of female in the big population, you will see how much it is. And when you go to the subgroup, you will be doing the same thing. You'll be using the same proportion to select from among the female as well as from among the male. An example here is if your population has 45% females and 55% males, so what you do is the sample should also have 45% females and 55% males. So in your population, if your population has 45% female and 55% male, then your sample also should maintain that proportion. Okay, so your sample also should be 45% female and 55% male. If you want to find out student perceptions of, for example, you will need to be doing this yourself. I won't be able to do this here, but this would have been fun to do in class. So you want to find out student perceptions of the extent the theological orientations of ETC is multi-denominational. Now, what can possibly happen if you use simple random sampling? What do you think? So if I have all ETC students and I try to do simple random sampling and I want to see what is the theological orientation of ETC. And if you choose the simple random sampling, what would happen is it's possible that you will have a number of students from one or two denominations and many other denominations not be represented. So in order to avoid that, stratified random sampling would help, because what you do then is you will stratify the whole of ETC students into their different denominations. In this case, for example, we may divide them into 5 different denominations, which we call A, B, C, D, E, for example. So we have 5 different denominations. And now what you do is from each area, from each denomination, proportionally, you will include into your study. So indicate the steps you would follow to select a sample of 60 students from ETC using the stratified sampling approach, assuming the student body is composed of 5 denominations, A, B, C, D, E. Okay, so I hope you will be able to do that one on your own and be able to understand it. The non-probability sampling, this is a biased sampling because I select on the basis of I know you, on the basis of knowledge of a person. The selection of participants is because they are available, convenient, or represent some characteristic the investigator wants to study. Types of non-probability sampling could be convenient sampling, selection of sample whoever you find. Okay, this is when you feel like you're not at your best. Okay, you're feeling lazy-ish. Then what you do is, this guy is available, you just pick him and put him in, but then you can clearly see the possible disadvantage of it, how biased your study would be when that happens. It's related to, similar to the coffee thing. You know, you want to prove that coffee is good, and what you do is you go and select your sample. Conveniently, those will give you good information supporting coffee is good. Okay. Purposive sampling, a selection of sample based on researchers' knowledge and experience. Okay. It's because of the person's knowledge of that person having the knowledge, the data that you can give you. So you know that the person can give you the data you want. You know he has the experience, you know he has the knowledge, or she has that experience and knowledge, and therefore you purposefully go and select that person on the basis of your knowledge of that person. So let me quickly show us this one. Quantitative sample size. Deciding on the sample size, the research proposal should provide information. So your proposal should give us information on the sample size and justification why you chose that one. General rules for sample size, as many subjects as possible, because with quantitative study, as we have already said, you have to have a big number in order for your study to be very well, very trustworthy. So you want to have a good sample size. 30 subjects for correlational. This will be like a minimum. 30 per group for causal comparative. So if you're doing correlational, you want to have at least 30 people. That's on a minimum. If you're doing causal comparative, you want to have 30 in each group. Causal comparative, you have 2 groups that you're comparing to, or more groups. So in each group, you want to have at least 30. For descriptive research, all for less than 100. If you have 100 and less, we'll say all of them. If it's a smaller group, then it will be 20%, 10%, and it goes on. So this is just a quick thing to help you decide. But then you have this table, also table of sample size you can use. So you have the N, which is the population, and then you have the sample that you will be taking. So for example, here 180, 123 of them will be a part of your study. 400, 196. As you can see, the larger your population, the sample size difference will be less. So Here, for example, for 400, you've chosen almost 200. When it is 3,000, you're still choosing about 341. So after a certain amount, the number of people you would include in your sample would relatively be less, so it doesn't have to be going up significantly. Okay. Qualitative sampling, selection of individuals to help the researcher understand the phenomenon issue. So it has to do with when you select, what you select in qualitative study is, do they have the knowledge? Do they have the information I need with regards to the issue? Qualitative samples are smaller than quantitative sample size. Obviously, we have said that because even the research method that you'll be using is different. You'll be interviewing, you'll be discussing, you'll be observing them on the site, and therefore you can't have huge sample size. Usually non-random, and it will be purposive. A variety of purposive sampling approaches are used in qualitative research. But what you want with this one, we'll talk about. Okay, we'll talk about how you select those ones. But generalization was the idea in quantitative study, but that will not be the case in qualitative study. So in qualitative study, when you are studying, you're trying to understand. You're going to be able to explore the situation that you're studying. So your finding cannot go beyond that. It primarily has to do with the specific group that you are studying. So you are understanding the group, an aspect of their human experience through an intensive study of their thesis. And therefore the finding, your conclusion, is mostly for that specific group that you've studied, and it doesn't necessarily go to another group. Okay. One of the sampling methods here, technique, is homogeneous sampling, purposive sampling technique that aims to achieve a homogeneous sample. The participants are chosen because they have similar perspectives and experience. So this one focuses on homogeneity. So when you select people into, or whatever you're studying, the issues, institutions, whatever you're studying, when you include them as part of your sample, it's because they are homogeneous. They are the same similar characteristics. Okay. So example, group of people who have similar age or gender, background, occupation. So that is the idea of homogeneity. Now remember, it is purposive. Okay. You will purposefully go and select those people who have similar backgrounds. Criterion sampling, on the other hand, is selecting participants who meet some set predetermined criterion or importance. So you're looking for a particular criteria. So when you select people, again purposefully, you will select those that have similar criteria, that meet a certain criteria. For example, students who have successfully defended their thesis. So you don't include all the students, but you will include students who have successfully defended their thesis, not just have written, but they have defended it and they have been successful. Okay, that's criterion. Another example is hostess who left their profession to raise children. Okay, you may want to see how the experience of women in raising their children, but then you have a criterion. You don't include all women, but you include women who have been hostesses and they have left their jobs to be able to take care of their children. Okay. Another one is snowball sampling or chain sampling. It begins with a few group of people, maybe one or two people, and then gradually it increases. So the sample size continues to increase as new contacts are mentioned by the people that you started. So you may start off with two people, and this person tells you, this other guy has that experience too, and this other one will tell you, that other person, she has that experience too. So now you have four. Now four of them can give you another name, and then it becomes bigger and bigger. So snowball sampling is, it starts small, but then it grows bigger and bigger and bigger. It begins by asking who knows a lot about this. Okay, determining sample size with this one. With qualitative study, there is no hard and fast rules for determining correct number of participants. More than 20 participants in a study is rare. So for the most part, it will be less than 20 in qualitative studies. More participants does not mean better. With quantitative, that was true, but with qualitative, more participants does not necessarily mean true, because it's the quality of data that you're collecting from these people that is important. Two general indicators include this, whether you have the right amount of participants or not. The extent the participants represent the range of potential participants. Do I have enough people that represents all the group of people that I have? For example, teachers of grades 1 to 6 are selected. It should either include other teachers from the higher grades. School teachers. If I am talking about school teachers, and if my sample has only teachers from grades 1 to 6, then that could have a problem there. It should either include other teachers from grades 7, 8, 9, 10, or the study should be limited to the elementary from grades 1 to 6. Okay? So one of the things that you want to see is representation. Are all the groups represented? Then redundancy of information, or what they call the data saturation. So you'll be interviewing, you'll be collecting data from one person, you get another data from another person, you get good amount of data, you go to the third person, you get more data, to the fourth person, you get more data, you add a little bit more, but less. Some of them is already repeated. You go to the sixth person, most of it begins to be repeated, maybe one or two new things. 7%, maybe you don't get any more. By the time you get to the 10th person, there is nothing new. Your data has now saturated. So you don't need to go beyond 10. Okay? So you see data saturation when the data you're getting is repeating itself and you're not getting anything new. That's about time to stop. Okay? And that could happen with 5, 6, 7 participants in your study in that you finish. So what would be your possible population and sampling technique that you would use for your own research? I would like you to think about it. If you want to share with us on the Google Classroom, I'll be happy. So think about your population, think about your sampling, include that in your research proposal that you are writing. So now we have gone very far in your research proposal. If you've been diligent working this far, you are almost finishing. Okay?